Hello. Welcome to the 14th annual celebration of the DFL Women's Hall of Fame. My name is Jen Emmerich, and I'm one of the co-chairs of this year's event. On behalf of my fellow co-chair, Naomi Lund, and an amazing group of women, we would like to welcome you today and thank you for being here to help us celebrate the contributions of DFL leaders, activists, and volunteers. We'd like to begin by having all past Women of Distinction and Rising Stars stand for a moment so that we may recognize their achievements. Thank you. Our honorees are all outstanding women who continue to make major contributions to public policy, the DFL party, campaigns on behalf of DFL candidates, and to the DFL principles and its platform. Thank you for your ongoing work and for continuing to make us proud to be DFL women.
As we sit down to enjoy our meals today, it needs to be said that Women's Summit Committee is a group that understands that the L in DFL stands for labor. We are at the Prom Center today because it is a union facility. The important connection between organized labor and everyday struggles and advances of women should not be overlooked. As women struggled for economic justice, organized labor often led the way. While women nationally make 77 cents for each dollar men earn, under union contract, women earn the same pay for the same work. We understand that women too frequently can't take active roles in politics because they're too busy working to make ends meet for themselves and their families. The contributions and advancements of organized labor have allowed women to participate in what has too frequently become a social luxury, politics. We know that when women partake in politics, they gain not only political freedom, but increased social and financial freedoms as well. It is in recognition of the important cycle of economic, political, and social empowerment and its connection with organized labor that we respect, support, and honor labor today. On behalf of all working people of Minnesota, please join me in thanking the fantastic staff of the Prom Center who prepared and served our wonderful meals today.
It is also important to take a moment to recognize our sponsors, because without them, this event would not be possible. Their generous contributions pay for our honorees' meals, programs, invitations, and scholarships. Our sponsors' names are listed in the program. Many of them are with us today, and we would ask that they stand so we can show our thanks for their generous support for this event. Our committee has been told over and over how wonderful the DFL Women's Hall of Fame event is, and we couldn't agree more. It is truly a toss-up as to who gets more joy out of today's event, the women being honored or our committee who gets to spread joy to so many. We'll now play a short video from our 10th anniversary luncheon that talks about how this committee started. Please watch and enjoy your meals. We'll continue the program at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
10 years ago, a small group of remarkable women believed that the vital contributions of DFL women should be celebrated in the style that DFL women deserve. The members of this group were Gail Huntley, Beth LaRoe, Sarah Leverance, Mary McAvoy, Betsy O'Berry, Judy Shermer, and Jackie Stevenson. Being women of action, they decided to honor the women leaders of this party and started the Women's Summit Committee. This original committee took the bold step of creating the DFL Women's Hall of Fame and going back to the DFL party structure to notify them of their creation afterwards. These women never asked permission to host this event. Keeping true to many female trailblazers before them, they simply took the leap of faith forward and created the DFL Women's Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is a concrete way to honor the contributions of women to our party and is unique in several ways. For the past 10 years, this grassroots event has encouraged everyone across the state to participate. Each year, the Women's Summit Committee solicits nominations on behalf of outstanding women from across Minnesota. The DFL Women's Hall of Fame is a one-of-a-kind event. It is the only DFL award ceremony that focuses exclusively on women. The women we have honored over the past decade represent a broad range of activists statewide that make up our whole DFL party. The DFL Women's Hall of Fame is also the only DFL award ceremony that does not focus on individuals currently holding elective office or party leadership on the congressional district level and above. It is our belief that we need to honor women not currently in the spotlight. That's not to say elected officials can't or don't win our awards, but rather they are not honored while currently serving in office. This ensures we remain true to our grassroots principles. We also identify and honor the new women of all ages that will become the future leaders of our party. Therefore, the Women's Summit Committee, from the beginning, established a Rising Stars category to acknowledge and encourage new and emerging leaders. Since the year 2000, we have honored over 130 women. One of the founders' greatest beliefs was that a woman, once she was honored as a woman of distinction, would always be a woman of distinction.
So I hope everyone is enjoying their lunches, conversation in the company of the outstanding DFL women. It's now time to start the presentation portion of today's event. We'll start by honoring our party's everyday heroes, our women of distinction. These women have been selected because they're trailblazers for other women in our party. They have committed their time, energy, and hearts to DFL politics. Our women of distinction have worked for public policies consistent with our principles. They've opened doors for other women and infused our party with new energy and ideas. Simply stated, they are women of distinction. The women on stage presenting the awards today are members of the Women's Summit Committee. They have volunteered their time for months to make this event a reality. In the interest of time, we ask that you hold your applause until we present our winners with their awards. Our first presenter today is Sky Miles.
Hi, everybody. If Judy could please stand for me. I don't know what table she's at. Judy Gilbert. Right in front of me. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I get the pleasure and honor of talking about Judy Gilbert. Judy Gilbert was born and bred in Hastings, Minnesota. She was married, raised 2 boys, 2 girls, has 12 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild. Judy is very community-driven. She likes to be social. A few things that Judy has been involved in or a leader on. She's been involved in the Hastings Charter Commission, the Hastings Police Commission, the Women's Club of Hastings, the Advisory Board for Governor Perpich's judicial appointments. She's been involved in the Regina Hospital Auxiliary and her local church, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. Judy is very modest, and she will state that she's just a volunteer that also likes to knit, garden, and visit with her grandchildren. Judy got active in the DFL in 1968. She and her husband attended her first caucus, wanting to be more active in her neighborhood. In that very first caucus, she was hooked, and I mean hooked. She loved that everyone in her neighborhood could come out and voice their opinions. As she stated, it was organized chaos. It was a giant social event, and that's what Judy likes best. She got her start on her first campaign working for Harry Sieben for the Minnesota Senate. She took charge of food, lit drops, and volunteer events. She found her joy in helping other volunteers. She was very good at keeping their bellies full. Judy became a ward chair, a county unit chair, a campaign chair. She would help out wherever she could. Judy was honored by the Minnesota Senate in May of 2008 for her service to her community. They put in a formal resolution, SR 220, to honor Judy for her longtime service to Dakota County courts for 35 years, for her service to her church, and all her other volunteer activities. The Senate even recognized that Judy always had her freezer stocked with goodies. They said that she could provide at a moment's notice. It is a matter of public record that she is the first to provide food for volunteers, for family gatherings, community events, and neighborhood parties. There is no volunteer job that Judy hasn't done or won't do. She's willing to do anything that helps people. An award she received from her local party unit simply states, "In appreciation, this certificate goes to the person who personifies the volunteer spirit, a worker we all wish we could be, upon whom the district regularly depends on to do the vital but frequently routine work, and who is almost always incapable of saying no to a noble cause." I'm very proud, and the Women's Subcommittee welcomes you to the DFL Hall of Fame as a woman of distinction. All right. It's now my honor to invite Jeannie Thomas.
Dottie, would you please stand? Ask Dottie Gilkerson about her two passions, her family and politics. You can always count on Dottie to have the latest pictures of her family and stories about what they're all up to now. Dottie's first involvement in politics was when Don and Marlis Orr asked her to help in a campaign. In 1972, when a neighbor, Bruce Williamson, ran for the Minnesota House of Representatives, she did all the usual things: stuffed envelopes, lit drops, held a fundraiser, but he didn't win. 2 years later, he said he wanted to run again. Jerry Gilkerson, Dottie's husband, said he was nuts, but he let Dottie and Jerry run the campaign if they could do it their way. The timing couldn't have been worse. They had just bought a new home and had a new baby. That baby daughter, Jennifer, is here with us today, and we welcome you. Dottie has always liked to challenge and set to work to make this a winning campaign. She and Jerry mailed 7,000 letters the week before the election. Thanks to Dottie's commitment, the election was won by 8 votes. It was Minnesota's first automatic recount. The recount held, and Jerry and Dottie were hooked. Since that time, every 2 years, a lucky candidate has Dottie working on their campaign. Dottie has held many positions within the DFL, both local, congressional, and state, working diligently to make things better and involving more people in the political process. She looks at challenges as things that need to be accomplished and uses her energy and finds solutions to those challenges. She is the hands working behind the scene, planning events, hosting fundraisers, and finding new ways to get people involved. At congressional district events, she's the first one there to help set up and doesn't leave until the last plate is washed and the room is put in order. Current chair of the 3rd Congressional District, Cheryl Poling, said, "It has never been about Dottie. It's about the DFL and what she can do to make it better. And if you have one volunteer in your congressional district that you can't replace, her name would be Dottie Gilkerson." Artis Wexler, former chair of CD3, says Dottie is beyond dependable in organizing and inspiring other volunteers with her "we can do this" attitude. Congratulations, Dottie Gilkerson. You are a great example of a woman of distinction. It's my pleasure to introduce Nancy Schumacher, who will make our next presentation.
Hi. Could Jed and Kathy please stand as we are honoring Marilyn? Marilyn Alprin Gorlin, student, education editor, talent scout for Warner Brothers, wife, mother, damn fine DFL activist. Today we honor Marilyn for unswerving contributions to the DFL, from Minneapolis 19th Ward Club chairwoman in 1958, Hennepin County secretary, and first vice chairwoman of the DFL, 1961 to 1968. Marilyn was the epitome of an activist. Her family is here today as we recognize her many achievements. Born in New York City, she moved to Minnesota when she married Robert. According to her son Jed, the East Coast directness never left her, and Minnesota nice was not an option. People always knew what Marilyn was thinking and feeling. Jed, along with his sister Kathy, watched their mother jump into politics, and she never looked back. As a contemporary of Donald Fraser, Arthur Naftalin, Roger Moe, Corinne Horrible, and of course, Hubert Humphrey, Marilyn was on the scene as the DFL, along with the rest of the country, struggled with the Vietnam War, peace activism, and civil rights. Always a progressive, Marilyn became one of the 2 highest-ranking Democrats in the country to break with the Johnson administration over the issue of Vietnam, well before the Minnesota precinct caucuses. Due to her passionate views, she did not seek another term as first vice chair. Marilyn continued her activism by serving on many statewide committees, speaking engagements, and chair of the DNC Regional O'Hara Reform National Convention Committee. This appointment is arguably one of the most important, as the committee was tasked with how Negro Democrats fared in the Mississippi precinct caucuses, which ultimately led to be seated or not at the National Convention. Marilyn strongly argued that while the National Party espoused equality, state organizations did not, and yet their delegations were seated at convention. This was only 1970. For her tireless work for liberal, fair ideals, on behalf of the Women's Summit Committee, we welcome Marilyn Gorlin as a woman of distinction. Next up will be Tammy Teskey Awesome.
Representative Greiling, will you please stand? It is my honor today to introduce our next inductee into the DFL Women's Hall of Fame, former Representative Mindy Greiling. Born and raised in Rochester, Minnesota, Mindy knew that she wanted to be a teacher by the 3rd grade. Years later, her accomplishments would include earning both a bachelor's and master's degree in education, teaching in St. Paul Public Schools, raising 2 wonderful children with Roger, her husband of 43 years, who's here with her today, volunteering for countless civic and community organizations, serving on the Roseville Area School Board, and serving 10 terms in the Minnesota House of Representatives. Her achievements are many, but today we honor her not only for her dedicated public service, but for her support, example, and leadership for women within the DFL party. Like others who have been recognized with this award, Mindy has devoted her time and energy over the years on behalf of issues that have enhanced the DFL. She has fought hard for the achievement of public policies consistent with the principles and platform of the Democratic Party. But perhaps most notably, she has opened doors for other women to hold elective office. No other woman has been as influential in bringing women into the DFL party or in recruiting, mentoring, electing, and facilitating women into positions of power and leadership in the Minnesota legislature. As a leader of candidate recruitment for the DFL House Caucus, Mindy made the recruitment and election of women candidates her #1 priority. For years prior to her leadership, party leaders would call her in a panic, during the last weeks of an election cycle and beg her to help them recruit candidates, always in districts where it was the toughest for Democrats to win. However, in 2004, when she agreed to head the candidate recruitment for the House Caucus, she agreed to do it only if she could do it right. To Mindy, that meant 2 things. First, candidates who had run in previous elections and lost would be asked to run again. Many, of course, were women who had run in previously hopeless districts for the DFL. Second, she would recruit women who were good fits for the party's top winnable districts. It wasn't easy, but it worked. Mindy spent up to 40 hours a week or more on the phone talking to potential female candidates and recruiting them to run. When they agreed, she provided them with the support, training, and mentors they needed. In the 2004 election, she recruited and helped elect 10 new women to the Minnesota House, increasing the number of DFL women serving from 16 to 26, and bringing the female composition of the party's delegation up to nearly 40%. In just 3 election cycles, due to her leadership and her intentional strategy to make the recruitment of female candidates a priority, the number of women in the DFL's delegation at the legislature doubled. As a legislator and a leader, Mindy advocated on behalf of teachers in education, environmental issues, and mental health issues. She served as chair of the K-12 Education Finance Committee, where she worked to enact legislation to make school funding fairer across the state. She founded and chaired the Mental Health Caucus, a bipartisan legislative committee formed with members from the House and the Senate to enact legislation aimed at improving access to mental health care. And she served as assistant minority leader during the 2003-2004 legislative session. When asked if she had any advice for young women wanting to follow her lead, she said, "Keep fighting, be ready to say yes, don't wait too long, and don't say no." She added that too often women want more time and more information. They want to think about it before going forward. And she said instead, women just have to trust themselves, lean in, and get in the game. Mindy, thank you for getting in the game and for being a teacher, a volunteer, an advocate, a recruiter, a mentor, a leader, and a trailblazer in the DFL. You exemplify what it means to be a woman of distinction, and it is my honor today to welcome you to the DFL Women's Hall of Fame. Our next presenter is Dolores Voorhees.
No one could say no to Mary. They were talking about Mary Tatum Howard, our next honoree. One DFLer told me, she inquired about my involvement in the community. She pulls you in by inviting you to meetings. Next thing you know, you are signed up for different activities and getting involved. Mary was at every meeting, but didn't say much. But in between meetings, she networked, asked, suggested, nudged, mentored, introduced people to each other, phoned, supported, asked you to dinner, or invited you to lunch at the VA where she was a psychologist. Dr. Howard has been a crusader for affirmative action her whole life. She earned her PhD from the University of Minnesota in counseling psychology in 1967. Dr. Howard was one of the first 100 African Americans to earn a doctoral degree in psychology. Dr. Howard made things happen in St. Cloud. She was the co-founder of the St. Cloud NAACP. I'm told that her party before the annual NAACP fundraiser was the place to be. These were events at her home featuring delicacies like salmon Wellington and baklava, and plenty of beverages that probably had just a little to do with the success of the fundraisers that followed. Dr. Howard supported DFL candidates. She phone banked, contributed money, and filled her lawn with signs. She was a member of Team Hillary, but was determined to travel to President Obama's second inauguration, and she did. She loved Senator Wellstone, worked for Terrell Clark, and for her local candidates. Besides being president of the St. Cloud School Board, her Unitarian Fellowship, and the 10,000-member American College Personnel Association, she served on the board of the Symphony and was responsible for the establishment of a police review board in St. Cloud. She fostered many teenagers, 4 of whom are still close, hosted numerous international students, and traveled to 5 continents. Wes Gadsden says, "When I am in the presence of Dr. Mary T. Howard, I am reminded of one of my favorite Southern Negro gospels. May the work I've done speak for me. May the life I've lived speak for me. And may the service I've given, let that speak for me." Welcome, Dr. Howard, into the DFL Women's Hall of Fame. I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Kathy Harrison.
Will Betty and Millie please stand? In 1967, Bertha Betty Risdall moved to Minneapolis from Canby, Minnesota, where she met Mildred, or Millie Jewell, who had recently moved from Watertown, South Dakota. They decided to room together while finding work and have been inseparable friends for over 40 years. In fact, you almost never see one without the other. They started their involvement in the DFL in 1996 by taking part in the Hilltop Biennial DFL caucuses. "We made up our minds we just had to do something about it," said Betty, referring to Newt Gingrich and his hurtful contract with America. They found Senator Paul Wellstone, the People's Senator, as the one person in Washington willing to stand up to Newt Gingrich and begin following his green bus around, attending parades and door-knocking all over the region, turning their frustration into action. From their work with the Wellstone campaign, they moved on to working on campaigns for Bill Luther, for former Senator Savtir Chaudhry in his first run for State House, and on his Senate campaign, and for Senator Barb Goodwin's House campaign. Along the way, they became invaluable to the DFL party and their Senate district, the doers that make every successful organizing unit run. To the DFLers in their Senate district, they have become known as the Hilltop Ladies. Deborah Douglas, Vice Chair of Senate District 41, stated, "I always know I can count on them. When our Senate district has its monthly meeting, Betty and Millie are there. When people are needed to help brainstorm ideas for their district, Betty and Millie are there. When people are needed to plan an event, Betty and Millie are there. When the time comes to set up for that event, Betty and Millie are there. When women are needed to step up to achieve the DFL's ideal of gender equality, Betty and Millie are there. They are like machines that perform dependably under stress," said Jeremy Powers, DFL State Director. "They are the pair we give the toughest jobs to." Deborah Douglas says, "Millie and Betty were among the first to cross my mind when the Minnesota Supreme Court handed down its redistricting plan. Once I knew where Fridley fell on the new map, I looked for Hilltop because a Senate district without the Hilltop ladies was not a thing to which I wanted to become accustomed." With just a few weeks to combine multiple districts and hold one convention, Betty and Millie took on their typical job of convention credentials. Needless to say, it went without a hitch. Further endearing them to their fellow directors in SD 41 are their treats for the monthly meeting. "It used to be we took turns. I'm not sure how it happened, but eventually we just started bringing treats to all the meetings," said Millie. "There are stories about when the pair were too sick to attend district meetings, they still managed to bake bars and to call and have someone pick them up." They were also much of the inspiration for the old SD 50s Pies and Politics events. The event drew people from all over who enjoyed an interesting political discussion, a social gathering, and of course, pie. Senator Barb Goodwin sums up Betty and Millie's work in the DFL. "These two women have worked hard for our Senate district for many decades. They have consistently worked to get Democrats elected. They volunteer their time and talents to help promote our party and to bring in more people. I am honored to present Betty Risdall and Millie Jewell as DFL Women of Distinction." The next award will be presented by Linda Wunderlich. Joy, would you please stand? When asked why she got involved with the DFL, Joy Johnson said, "Well, I certainly wouldn't want to join the Republicans." Joy got involved in politics in southwestern Minnesota, where her husband Bob was teaching. In 1972, they met Rick Nolan, who was running for Congress in the 6th Congressional District. Nolan's first congressional campaign would become the first of many for Joy and Bob. During the campaign, they told Rick that he could stop by their house whenever he was in town, even if they weren't home. Joy said she could always tell when he was there because he had left the peanut butter out. When Joy and Bob returned to southeast Minnesota, they got involved in the Fillmore County and 1st Congressional District DFL. Joy says she has done just about everything in the party except serve as treasurer.
As county chair, she trained all her precinct chairs and feels it really helped them understand their role. Joy has also organized lawn sign locations, parades, fairs, and 2 events with Garrison Keeler in Lanesboro, and is always on the lookout for candidates. One of her many accomplishments was helping Ken Chumper defeat 8-term Republican incumbent Greg Davis in 2006. But what makes Joy truly incredible is her work not only as a DFLer, but as a global citizen. From 1965 to 1969, Bob and Joy were agricultural missionaries in Costa Rica and Chile. They taught agriculture and home ec, helped at the Workers' Church, and Joy ran a Mother's Club. Joy also traveled to Nicaragua on mission trips 7 times. During those trips, Joy interpreted for doctors serving local women who came into the hospital. Bob and Joy also traveled to Cuba with the Quakers to teach. Joy is passionate about working for peace. She is an active member of the Southeast Alliance of Peacemaker and Minnesota Arms Spending Alternatives Project. Joy has also protested at the School of the Americas at Fort Benning, Georgia, and noted that she was arrested and booked once. Although they really didn't have enough room to actually put her in jail. For both her work in Minnesota and abroad, consistent with our principles of social justice, Joy is well deserving of our recognition as a DFL Woman of Distinction. Congratulations, Joy, and welcome to the DFL Women's Hall of Fame. The next award will be presented by Jeannie Thomas.
Truly, some of us are honored to be able to speak about 2 great people. It's my pleasure to talk about Sandra Peterson. Sandra grew up in the small town of Benson, Minnesota. There she learned that the greatest joy in life was leadership, working with people, and helping mold new leaders. Sandra and her late husband raised 2 sons in New Hope, and Sandra started her career in education. Her life has revolved around education, teaching, and leadership. She believes that participation in the political world enables you to impact the future. Her skills were soon recognized. She became president of the Robbinsdale Federation of Teachers and president of the Minnesota Federation of Teachers, and a vice president in the Minnesota AFL-CIO. Sandra also served as a vice president of the American Federation of Teachers. Are you getting the education drift here? As president of MFT, Sandra served on the team that successfully merged the Minnesota Education Association and the Minnesota Federation of Teachers. She and Judy Schabach became the co-presidents of Education Minnesota. Past president of MEA and co-president of Minnesota Education Association, Judy Schabach said, "Throughout her career, Sandra has supported and encouraged others to get involved in politics as a way to achieve economic and social justice. She has been both a role model and a mentor and a strong labor and education leader." After retiring, in name only, from education leadership, Sandra decided there was more that she could do for women and children. Those who knew her well encouraged her to run for the Minnesota House of Representatives. Of course, she was elected, and she held this position until 2012. Sandra continues her efforts as a strong advocate for early childhood opportunities and affordable health care, and served as the co-chair of the Early Childhood Caucus and on the Education and Health Care Committee while in the House. Representative Erin Murphy, upon hearing of her decision not to run for re-election, said, "She will be missed as a voice of reason and as a mentor to other new legislators." Congratulations, Sandra. a woman of distinction in every sense of the word, and it is my honor today to welcome you to the Women's Hall of Fame.
Over the years, our rising stars of the DFL party have lived up to their title. Our winners have quickly emerged as the leaders of the party today. In the past, our rising stars have included successful Capitol lobbyists and legislative aides, top union leaders and political organizers, statewide DFL party officers, and the impressive list goes on. Our winners today are women that are relatively new to the DFL. These women have exhibited outstanding potential and achievement as leaders in our party and campaigns. Our rising stars are dedicated to bringing women into the DFL and working to achieve and promote DFL principles. We also recognize their ability to infuse our party with new energy and ideas. As the Women's Summit Committee selects rising stars, we keep one overriding question in mind. In another 10 years, will we be proud of this woman, her principles, and her achievements? The bar has been set quite high by our remarkable Rising Stars alumni. Yet we feel absolutely confident that our new rising stars will make us proud to claim them as one of our own. Presenting our first Rising Star Award today is Naomi Lund.
Audrey, could you please stand for me? Audrey Britton has always been a cause-driven person, grounded in principles of fairness, equity, and opportunity for all. A Bloomington native, Audrey attended St. John's St. Benedict College and received degrees in English and political science. Right after school, she was excited to jump in, make an immediate difference, and change the world. As a self-described fixer, her college internship gave her valuable experience that things in life don't always get fixed quickly, pushing her away from a career in politics. Instead, she pursued a career in communications and strategy and currently owns a consulting business. But it didn't take long for Audrey's passion for public service to pull her back into being a volunteer at both the state and local level. Over the years, she's helped with newsletters, press releases, and publicity, and is active with the Plymouth Progressives. Audrey has used her professional skills to work on our Senate District's website and the 3rd Congressional District communications team. Audrey is a warm, personable, intelligent, and passionate woman, and a very skilled communicator. She has the ability to talk to anyone about anything. She's deeply committed to supporting and growing small businesses. Never compromising on ideals, she speaks the language of business and makes a compelling case for how Democrats can influence the marketplace. Recently, Audrey testified in committee on Minnesota's setup of the healthcare exchange. She advocated for a plan modeled in simplicity and similar to the one set up in California, which gives consumers the ability to do apples-to-apples comparisons and forces insurers to compete on price. She's also lobbied for tax fairness and a closer examination of tax expenditures, promoting a more competitive and economic environment for all business. Audrey first ran for office in the old Senate District 43, and although she was a long shot for election in 2010, she did very well with the voter preference index. And after redistricting caused her new district of Senate District 44 to become more conservative in 2012, she ran again and lost by only a small number of 350 votes. When Audrey talks about her business, running for office, and her other accomplishments, she speaks first about the team and the people who helped her along the way. She's very quick to point out that it's not about me, it's all about the volunteers, and that arrive to her door every day to door knock and talk to voters across her district. Audrey Britton, we all hope you continue to shine as a leader in business and in the DFL party, and we honor you today as a rising star. It's my honor to introduce Krista Parkin.
Keisha, if you could please stand. Keisha was inspired by her high school history teacher to get involved in politics by participating in Model Assembly and Model United Nations. She went on to attend Camp Wellstone and, at age 14, was their youngest participant ever. Although she was initially scared to tell her parents she was a Democrat because they held more conservative views, once she did tell them, they drove her to anything and everything she wanted to do. This included not only volunteering at the local DFL office, but also attending rallies for John Kerry and John Edwards and having dinner with Dennis Kucinich. Keisha began volunteering for State Representative Andy Welty in 2006. She started by door knocking with him and then became his parade organizer. Keisha says that he trusted her from the very beginning and saw her potential, consistently giving her more responsibility until she was hired as his field organizer in 2010. Keisha has door knocked countless hours and says it gives her an endorphin rush. When asked about her funniest door knocking experience, she recounted how a 60-ish-year-old man answered the door completely naked. She was about to walk away when the man said, "So tell me about your candidate," and Keisha proceeded to make her pitch. Keisha believes her greatest success in politics is getting young people involved with the DFL. Despite attending college in a very conservative part of Iowa, she served as president of the Campus Democrats and in 2008 organized other college students to volunteer at a nearby Obama rally. That same year, she was an Organizing for America intern and helped organize door knocks and phone banks. As a result of her efforts, President Obama got 18% of the vote that year in her county, more than any Democrat had ever received there. Keisha believes that because she was young and active in politics, other young people who saw her were inspired to become active as well. In 2010, she recruited one of her best friends to phone bank and a young neighbor to door knock. Keisha is passionate about issues of education and the rights of persons with disabilities. She just returned from 27 months with the Peace Corps in Kyrgyzstan, where she taught English to children. Prior to entering the Peace Corps, Keisha worked at Ability Building Center in Rochester and taught swimming lessons to children with disabilities. Perhaps the best thing about Keisha is that she is always willing to go above and beyond and look for additional ways to help the candidates and issues she is passionate about. For this, Keisha is well deserving of our recognition as a DFL Rising Star. Congratulations, Keisha, and welcome to the DFL Women's Hall of Fame. Our next award will be presented by Betsy O'Berry. Lisa?
Quiet but tenacious, a dedicated hard worker, persistent, forceful, and a genius at organizing people. These are the few of the words that have been used to describe our next rising star, Lisa O'Neill. The daughter of a die-hard DFLer and the granddaughter of a Baptist preacher, Lisa brings a strong sense of right and wrong to the political work she does, and she does a lot of work. Lisa is currently the president of the Minnesota State Association of Letter Carriers and treasurer of her local union, National Association of Letter Carriers, Branch 29. She's also treasurer of the 6th Congressional District DFL and the single mother of a 9-year-old son. Nominator Bill Usher, chair of the 6th Congressional District DFL, says that Lisa is always there when you need her, provides great common sense, and is absolutely dependable, a trait you definitely want in your treasurer. As president of the State Association of Letter Carriers, much of Lisa's work involves getting members to talk about union issues with their legislators. Pam Donato, a friend and mentor of 25 years who currently works for the National Association of Letter Carriers in Washington, D.C., says that Lisa has done an amazing job of funneling issues into conversations. At Lisa's first convention last year, a major part of the second day was spent discussing the same-sex marriage amendment. Now, I should explain. The letter carriers represent everyone from the largest metro area post offices to, as Lenny Larson put it, letter carriers who work in one-horse towns in rural Minnesota. Pam and former Branch 29 President Lenny Larson did not think that spending a day on this topic was advisable. But Lisa persisted. She did it anyway, and everyone who attended was impressed with the results. By framing the issues as one of rights and allowing small group conversations, hearts and eyes were opened, and minds and votes were changed. Lisa says that her biggest job is to help people learn to have a conversation with their legislators, because whether you are a letter carrier or a farmer or a teacher or a restaurant worker or a tax accountant, your voice should be heard. With a passion for women's, workers, and environmental rights, Lisa is an inspirational leader for our party and our state. It is with great pride that we recognize her today as a rising star of the DFL. Our next presenter is Stephanie Fox.
You're already standing, Tiffany. Awesome. Thank you. Tiffany Stingline began her involvement in the DFL when she caucused for Al Franken's first Senate campaign in 2008. She was inspired by his intelligence, sharp mind, and ability to see the absurdity in any situation. Not long after, she was recruited to be a door knocker and phone bank worker for Brainerd's local candidates, John Ward and Al Doty. In 2010, Tiffany committed to working 1 day per week in her local DFL office. But since the office was just down the road from her home, she found herself there on a much more frequent basis. At the same time, she also served as treasurer for State Senate candidate Taylor Stevenson. Her involvement didn't stop there. In 2011, Tiffany was elected Crow Wing County DFL chair. Earlier this year, she was re-elected for a second term. Tiffany also serves as a director for Senate District 10 and a member of the Minnesota DFL Constitution, Bylaws, and Rules Committee. When asked what she's done to energize the party, Tiffany speaks with great pride about her highly successful efforts in bringing more youth into the DFL. Give them pizza and they will come, she jokes. Tiffany recognizes that nothing brings new ideas to the party like young minds who don't tolerate the status quo simply because that's the way we've always done it. In fact, she enlists the young folks to encourage the older DFL members in the county to get more involved and try new things. Following in the footsteps of a favorite literary character, Tiffany sometimes asks herself, why me? She knows the answer is, if not me, then who? She believes in taking responsibility for what's going on around her, and that is why the DFL Women's Hall of Fame is proud to welcome Tiffany as one of this year's Rising Stars. Our next presenter is Jen Emmerich.
Julie, if you could stand. There you are. My initial thought when I met Julie Struther was, what an incredibly motivated and gracious person. Julie grew up in Cologne, Minnesota, and she's been involved with DFL politics since she was a teenager. Her first contribution was at the young age of 17, when she worked on the David Minge congressional campaign. Julie had been following him since the 8th grade when she played him in a mock debate. Though she has always been interested in policy, she credits her dive into DFL politics to an enthusiastic high school teacher and Alana Peterson, her mentor and friend. She met Alana during her many hours of door knocking and fundraising. After graduating from Chaska High School, Julie interned for then Senator Dayton and subsequently attended UW-Madison, where she pursued a degree in political science and history with a concentration in African studies. During college, she continued volunteering, focusing her energy on helping victims of domestic violence. Even while studying abroad in Ghana, Africa, she volunteered at women's shelters. After graduation, Julie returned to Minnesota and jumped right back into volunteering by getting involved with Secretary of State Mark Ritchie's election. She also pursued her law degree at the University of Minnesota, where after graduating, she clerked for Judge Minge and worked on the Dayton recount. Throughout her adult life, Julie has continued to work on domestic violence issues, tribal law, and election protection. In addition to those previously mentioned, she also worked on many other campaigns, including Margaret Anderson Kelleher, Melissa Franzen, and Al Franken. Lastly, she most recently lobbied for payday lending reform, fighting for a law that would help protect unbanked individuals. Currently, Julie works as an attorney and lives in her grandmother's old house in Edina, but as a bona fide city girl, she is quick to point out that she's still in Keith Ellison's district. She continues to focus much of her energy on women's issues by doing extensive volunteer work with Women Winning. She is devoted to helping women get involved with the DFL. This dedication stems from her own experiences, as she was the first in her family to get involved in politics. Julie recalled a story of how Alana helped her land her first internship. They were having dinner at a macaroni grill, and Alana helped her compose a resume on the paper tablecloth, writing out her achievements with the restaurant-provided crayons. Julie still has that scrap of tablecloth today. She explained that many women don't run for office because they've never been to a precinct caucus or a convention, and that's scary. Through Women Winning, she helps demystify the political process and breaks down those internal barriers for those young women. Julie said that she had so many people who helped open doors for her, and she wants to continue to do that for others. She stated it best when she said, "I love to work to get people elected and then watch them do great things." Julie, you are truly an inspiration and so deserving of this award. Welcome to the DFL Women's Hall of Fame.
At this time, we'd like to acknowledge some of the hardest working, most generous in spirits and time and energy, and one of the most dedicated group of women in our party, the members of this Women's DFL Hall of Fame Summit Committee. Many of these women are DFL Women's Hall of Fame members themselves, and this event could not happen without their collective effort. We would ask the 2013 Women's Summit Committee to stand and be honored. Sandy Anderson, Stephanie Fox, Kathy Harrison, Naomi Lunn, Sky Miles, Kathleen Murphy, Betsy O'Barry, Teresa O'Neill, Krista Parkin, Tammy Teskey-Austin, Liza Scott, Nancy Schumacher, Jeannie Thomas, Dolores Voorheels, and Linda Wernick. Every year, after honoring these remarkable women, we hope that all of you today feel as we do, inspired by their stories and aware of, in awe of their achievements, and move to action. At this time, it is also appropriate to acknowledge the contribution and sacrifices of those significant to all of our winners. As most people in the room know, political dedication can sometimes be a lifestyle choice. To all those who care for the DFL women in their lives, we thank you for the understanding and support through all those missed meals, all the lawn signs you've had to maneuver around over the years, and all the tears of joy and not so much joy you've wiped away over the years.
As you leave today, please think about women you know that should be honored at our next event. You can download the form and nominate them at our website, www.womensummitcommittee.com. On your table are packets of seats that encourage you to honor DFL women today and mentor DFL leaders tomorrow. Remember, honor today, mentor tomorrow. These are words to live by and are key Women's Summit Committee values. Thank you so much for your gracious attendance today. We'd ask that all honorees please head over to Tammy right there to get the group photo. Also, we have videotaped today's program, and you may request a copy at the registration table. We wish everyone a wonderful rest of your weekend and look forward to seeing you at the 15th anniversary luncheon next year. Please join the committee in one last tribute by raising your glass and offering a toast to all DFL women. Woo, cheers. Thank you.